Good Morning, like the
Good morning.
some guy who tried to take over from him in Good Morning Vietnam. Remember that movie? Like Robin Williams
Yeah.
starred, doing all the voices, and then his captain or whatever thinks he can do just as good job. And he comes on and he does like lots of sort of stereotypical voices. It's terrible. Yeah,
It was a good movie, I think.
I think it was quite good.
Recollection.
I remember going to see it and I was a bit disappointed because I was wanting something more like Mork and Mindy. And then I got this sort of fairly serious
set in Vietnam. Set in a war. You were looking for Mork and Mindy in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
MASH is kind of like that. MASH is kind of sort of like a, they try to.
Yeah, exactly. MASH was that. That worked for MASH.
Wait, MASH the show, MASH the TV show, or MASH the movie?
I think the movie was more serious.
Uh,
The TV show was mostly what I saw, but I stopped watching it like 35 years ago, so my memory's not that great.
I think it's still on. I think you can find it streaming somewhere. Let me take a look where.
I used to like MASH a lot as a kid. I thought it was funny.
Did you? I don't know. Yeah, I remember seeing it a lot as a kid. I don't remember finding it funny. I did find it fun. Well, I remember at one phase I did get quite into it, but not when I was a real kid. I mean,
I was into it as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on Hulu.
Is it? It would be kind of interesting to watch it all through, I imagine.
I wonder if it would hold up today.
I think it would. I don't know. I mean, it has to. I mean, they're talking about like being doctors in a wartime situation.
Yeah, it's basically trying to cope with grace. That's what it should have been called. Coping with Grace. That's not as cool of a title, though.
Did you guys ever read the book or see the movie?
I did see the movie. I never read the book, although you would see the copies of the book. There was a series of books, wasn't there?
Yeah, you can look it up. The guy who wrote the first book was Richard Hooker, and I believe he was an army surgeon in the Korean War. And the book, it wasn't faithfully adapted by Robert Altman for the movie. Robert Altman, if you watch MASH, he was trying to make a movie about Vietnam. And it isn't said explicitly they're in Vietnam, but the sensibilities of the film are more Vietnam than Korea.
Yes.
And the ending is different from the book. And he wrote a sequel to MASH called MASH in Maine, which is one of my favorite novels. I don't know why. It's just I like the way it's written. And then because it was so popular because of the TV show, they hired a ghostwriter to write all these dreadful sequel novels like MASH in Moscow, MASH in Greece, blah, blah, blah. You can look them up.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah,
Monster Mash.
They were trying to spin off. They were trying to play on the celebrity of the TV show. And I tried reading one or two of the novels, and they were awful. But MASH and Maine are good.
I don't want to interrupt, but I'm getting a weird sort of echo.
Oh, that's probably me. Hang on.
Our viewers out there, and the viewer should speak up if they hear an echo.
Yeah, I mean the potential guests. Yeah, right off the top of my head, I was thinking Vietnam, but then I realized, oh yeah, it could have been Korea also, but in my head it's Vietnam.
Can you guys?
Yeah, it's set in Korea, but it always sort of feels more like it's in Vietnam, and it was sort of kind of talking about Vietnam.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you though.
Yeah, that was deliberate by Robert Altman. He wanted a movie about Vietnam, and the studio, they wouldn't let him. In fact, they specifically put in this thing that you read at the beginning of the movie, but it's a quote by MacArthur about how he'll go to Korea to make sure that the movie people realize that this is set in Korea.
MacArthur will go to Korea?
Yeah. He wanted to nuke the Chinese.
Oh, you mean this idea of like MacArthur wanted to keep going with the invasion, and then whoever was president was like, "No, don't do that."
Well,
That thing?
I can't. It's been so long since I've read about this stuff.
Yeah.
But remember, it was a police action. It wasn't. Well, that's sophistry. It was called a police action, not a war. But they didn't want MacArthur to escalate it. But yeah, my uncle, he was in the Korean War. He's going to be 90 in a few days, which is
congratulations to him. And congratulations, yes, to all people who have birthdays today. Vietnam's interesting. Tina, who's probably our viewer, she's one of our viewers. She thinks we should have more defined topics for these shows. She thinks I should spend more of my time planning and organizing these shows.
I like all the speculation, though. The speculation is fun. I like to be about half right about stuff. That's more fun. It engages your imagination more.
Yeah, I like more speculation. Now, I did tell Dale, and I have been meaning to do this. I feel I ought to be doing more drawing. And I feel like now Dale's here, I feel it's a little easier because you and him can converse. And I can just interject. So I'm going to go back to my drawing. I think I'm going back to my drawing I was working on before with the space.
Are you gonna show it on the screen, or are we just gonna see you looking down at your drawing? Chuck's drawing, you can tell because he's not talking to us and he's looking down.
Now, Dale, I don't know why I missed it, but yesterday you saw Sergio live drawing, Sergio Aragonés, and I don't know why I missed it. I set like all sorts of reminders on my computer, but apparently none of them decided to remind me at the right time.
I missed part of it too. Chris, just in case you don't know, Sergio Aragonés is a cartoonist who's drawn for Mad Magazine since I think about 1962. And he's also quite unique to the American comics market at the time in the 80s, created his own comic book character and kept the rights of it. The character's name Gru. So Sergio has kind of a legendary following. There's even an award named after him. And because he's in his 80s and he has half a brain, he's not going to conventions because he's concerned about the pandemic.
Oh, he's not going to any conventions.
Yeah. And so he, to help out the National Cartoonist Society, he did some, he sold some sketches. People would contact him and say, hey, I'd like you to draw a sketch of this. And so on camera, he penciled the sketches. People would say, oh, I want this character and a dragon, or I want Santa and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And he would pencil it in quickly. And to save time, people would say, oh, ink it later. So we got to see him pencil a lot of different things, which is just amazing because he just whips this stuff up out of his head very quickly. And you can find it on YouTube. Let me see if I can find the description.
So, Dale, you're saying he was kind of a pioneer in the sense that, did you say Gru was the character he created?
Yeah, this is a guy who his parents ran from Spain during the Spanish Civil War. He grew up in Mexico. He's been a cartooning fan since he was a tiny little kid drawing on walls. And he did cartoons in college that his friends sent to magazines because he never did. and he started becoming a paid cartoonist because of his friends. They convinced him, even though he didn't speak English, to move to New York. They set all the magazines that he went to trying to sell cartoons. They sent him to Mad Magazine, and he found a home there. And in the 80s, he had seen cartoons in other countries like Tintin or Asterisk that were humor comics, because in the United States at that time, all the comic book stuff, except for some experiments like Plop, they were all superhero. So he created this kind of superhero slash comedic character that he was able to market. And there have been comic book companies that have made these comics for him. He's unique in that he owns the rights. And they publish the comic. The comics companies publish the comics for him. And a number of these companies have actually risen and died, gone bankrupt during the time that he's been publishing it. So the character often jumps from one comic book publisher to another. Dark Horse publishing them for years.
I mean, that sounds like a good way to do it. It sounds like he had a pioneering business sense. Let the companies take the risks and just license out your character.
Yeah, he's very savvy. I know he's gotten into fights with people over the webcomics business model.
Oh yeah, what sort of
how so?
I'm sorry.
Are you asking me or Chuck? We both said something over each other. No, my question was, what were the fights about with web?
Yeah, well, that was my question.
Well,
okay.
I forget the person he got into the fight with. I think it was the artist who draws PvP, player versus player.
Oh wow! Oh yeah! With
trying to remember
Brad. I'm not Scott McCann. Scott
McCloud.
Scott
Kurtz. Okay.
Yeah.
And I may be remembering this completely wrong, and I have nothing but respect for Scott Kurtz. So the idea of the webcomics model, and Chuck can go into greater detail because he is a web cartoonist, was the idea that it's like radio. You put the comics out there for free, and that attracts readers, and you then merchandise the comic strip in some fashion, such as books, t-shirts, mugs, Patreon, etc. And Sergio didn't see that as a stable business model. I think that's what the argument was. And I don't know if he was right or not, because I remember I was in Long Beach at the NCS Fest, and Chuck was down there. There was a lecture by some web cartoonist, and this is 3 or more years ago, and they were saying that the business model for webcomics was changing at the time.
I was just going to say the ridiculous thing about that to me, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, is same thing's happening with musicians. Making music, the thing that like you're supposed to do, as a musician, which is make music, is actually kind of a loss leader. I mean, if you make music, you basically like, that's not where you make your money on the music. You make your money on the merchandising and the touring. It's like, it'd be like if you manufacture cars, but I don't know what the equivalent would be, but you make your money on car washes and the little pine things that hang inside the car, and I don't know, things that aren't the actual car. I mean, maybe that's how you have to do it, but it just seems ridiculous that that you don't actually
your
make your
problem
money.
is your competition. That's always your
Yeah.
problem in any business, is that somebody's coming along and offering a similar product, at a different price. And
But you could say that about merch
web
too,
classing is
though.
that, any kid can draw a comic and stick it up and put it up. I mean, the reason I started doing web comics is because I didn't see I was going to find any publisher for Pupil. I wasn't really doing it for publication. I did it for my own amusement. And I don't know, and it wasn't really a format seller, so I just started putting them up on the web. First I started putting them in zines, and then when I could put them on the web, I put them on the web. And I don't know, finding readers, making money. It's not a business model because I didn't make any money off it. I mean, some people did, like Scott Kurtz, and that wrote a very good book called Making Web Comics. It was Kurtz and a few of the four.
Brad Gagar, I think, was one of them.
Oh yeah, Brad Gagar, yes, and. Anyway, some of those guys who did popular early web comics, and they wrote a very good book on the subject. It's definitely worth reading, about how to monetize it. But they definitely talk about their sort of business ethics of, posting regularly, all the little tips and tricks that, they were able to use to monetize their web comics. So I think, you do need to sort of approach it with a pretty sort of businessy mindset, and I think those guys do.
I mean. Yeah. If you look at the music stuff, if you're making your money off of T-shirts and touring, I mean, there's competition there too. I mean, it's not really hard to tour. I've done it a few times. I mean, it's more work than probably making T-shirts, but there's competition around there too. Lots of it. There's tons of people making merchandise. I just think that those models are more fair than the music. Just selling music. It seems like the peripheral stuff has just a better business model. It'd be cool.
I can't be a businessman and an artist. It's actually impossible. I can be a businessman one day and an artist the next day. I can spend some time focusing on businessy tasks, so I can spend some time focusing on creating art. But to be both is really hard, and it's totally different mindset. And the better I get at art, the less good I get at business. So
yeah, I agree, man. To get yourself in that business frame of mind, it's almost like a different person. And I just, if you spend all your time in that frame of mind, I think it negatively affects your creative output. At least it does for me, because it's like the difference between thinking about, I don't know, like math and something that's a lot less well defined. I don't know.
It's like math. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, of course it is.
It's a different.
It's a totally different thing. It's using different part of your brain for doing different things.
Yeah.
So, if you're a good businessman, chances are you're not going to be a good artist. If you're a good artist, you're not going to be a good. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's some people that. Some unique individuals combine the best of both worlds. They've got an 18 on business sense and an 18 on artist sense, and can do it all.
Yeah.
But
screw those people.
It's a question of time more than anything.
How ruthless is Tina? You got to part.
Tina's not ruthless.
You have to have a ruthless partner.
The thing with art as a business, though, you have to remember that a lot of times businesses make money in ways that are just not obvious to people. One of the things that was an education to me, I was a manager of a computer store called Computerware. And this is before the Apple stores. And they had about 10 stores in the Bay Area, and they were the only Mac retail store that specialized in Apple computers. And what I didn't know until I became a manager was that they didn't make any money on selling computers. The markup was next to nothing. What they made their money on is, in the old days, you would come in and buy a computer, you would buy a printer, or they would give you a printer. And then you would also, I've got a computer and a printer. I need to buy some paper. I need to buy some ink. I need to buy rolls. and it was the peripherals that had the markup.
Yeah.
Extended.
Because the people are inspecting the prices of the computers and the printers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is it. They're really closely looking at those prices. They don't look at the price of the mouse pad.
Yeah.
The ink, man. The ink.
I remember reading an article around that time about how printer ink was the most valuable liquid, most expensive liquid on earth, more expensive than the most expensive perfume or liquid gold or anything.
Or you guys have heard the meme about McDonald's, their ice cream machine never working, right?
Yeah, I just recently saw that. Elon Musk had a meme about it.
What is it?
Well, those franchises have to buy a specific machine. And the reason that they're not working is it has to do with the cleaning cycle of the machine. Ice cream machines have to run through a cleaning cycle. And if it comes out as unsuccessful, then they can't use the machine. You can Google this subject. There's actually a lawsuit. A company had designed a device that would help these McDonald's ice cream machines for franchisors get through the cleaning cycle. And the company that makes these machines sued this startup. So what you discover in learning about these machines is this company makes money off of servicing those machines.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes you make the money on things that are just not obvious to the purchaser. One of the things I would argue is that, you're making music, you're making art, but you're really in the business of selling something else, a t-shirt, a toy, a mug.
A lifestyle. Lifestyle brands are really big. People like the Kardashians. I mean, to me, I still don't really understand the Kardashians, except for in the context of a lifestyle brand where there's so many people that are just like, that's the lifestyle I want. And the closest you can come to participating in it is to buy something from the Kardashians because they've made all their money through their lifestyle brands, not their TV show. And I guess they're really rich or something. I don't know. I've never watched that show in my life.
Well,
I think part of it is advertising, all right? So advertising is part of any business. You need to sort of advertise your product. You've got to somehow get people to be aware that your product even exists. You can be like me. You can be the greatest artist in the world, but you just can't be bothered advertising it. And that's why you're not also doing more stuff. But I don't know. Yeah, or you can be like realize that any business has to advertise. Put a certain amount, and making the comic or the art is you can see you can choose to see that as your advertisement. I suppose that's the argument. That's your advertisement. That's your putting out. That's what's drawing in the people, and then getting them to part with the money. That's different. You want, and I guess you need to do it subtly. Yeah, you want to. They're inspecting the computer, so you put that you don't make any profit on that, and then whack up. Well, Douglas Adams said that they made all the money on the dongly bits. All the cables and the connectors and the cords. That's where the real money is. We've all got a big box.
Those Apple cables, man.
The market,
like $40
with a box or just a wire, one plug thing plugging into another plug thing. We've all got a big box of these wires. I worked at Monster Cable for a while. They made a ton of money.
Did you?
Cables.
You worked at Monster Cable for a while?
Yeah, they had their own. Yeah, it was a good place to work.
They make a lot of audio cables. Yeah, they make a lot of audio cables, and they used to come with a lifetime guarantee. And man, are their cables overpriced.
Yeah, they're super overpriced, but they had like a workshop there. They were working. I mean, they were they were making every component as expensive as it possibly could be. And then they were trying to find a way to make it even more expensive. Because you've got people who are spending tens of thousands of dollars on a stereo system. They don't care if they're spending $10 on a cable. Because you're selling the cable, saying if you don't use this cable, you're not going to be getting the full value out of your expensive stereo system.
What's snake oil, man? Snake
It is,
oil.
it isn't. You know, it's like diminishing returns. I mean, that's always the same at the high end of the market. You know, it's like, oh, if you go like whiskey, you know, they'll always have some ridiculously priced bottles. You know, because somebody spent their money on that. You know, somebody made a lot of money on the oil in the oil fields. You know, they want to. They got more money than they know what to spend on. They want to show off and buy a stupid bottle.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, there's definitely some things in the audio world that are straight up snake oil, and yeah, like you're saying, it's diminishing returns on those cables. I mean, they're good cables and everything, but it's like, you know, if you spend $1 million on a cable, yeah, it's going to be good.
Well, they didn't have any $1 million cables, but I think they had things that were like
they didn't, but
getting
they were
quite up to like the 3 figures for a cable.
I mean, so my exposure to them is through like what I guess they'd call the pro audio market. So not audiophiles with stereo systems, but audiophiles that are like mixing engineers and stuff like that. And I knew about their stuff, and I knew it was good, but it is very much diminishing returns. I used to be pretty into that stuff, but not anymore.
You used to be into diminishing returns?
No, I mean, I used to be into this idea of like, you know, get the best cables possible, but the key to doing a lot of stuff is to know like what to prioritize, right? And this is true of a lot of things. And with audio, there's like, you know, if you make an album, there's, you know, 300 things that went into that album, from the cables to the, you know, the instruments, all this stuff. And some of it's just not very important. And it doesn't matter if you get a normal, you know, a common, whatever it is, cable, or you get the world's best cable, it's going to contribute less than 0.5% to the end product. But you only learn that after maybe like, you know, doing it for like 10 years where you're like, this is not even worth thinking about. And there's a lot of people that are new to audio that are focusing on the wrong things, you know?
Yeah.
I
used to do that. Mountain Goats or somebody who's using this really lo-fi sound.
Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I spend a lot of time looking at sample rates and bit depth and stuff like that. And you know, geez, man, my advice to anybody that's doing that right now is stop doing that. It's a total waste of time. Same thing with the cables, mostly. Just buy an average cable. You're done.
That could be your advice to anybody about anything on this planet, you know, unless they're actually growing food.
Well, I mean, some stuff it makes sense to buy. I mean, some stuff you do want to spend your money on. You know what I mean? Like you do want to spend some money on a microphone. You do want to spend some money on certain things, but cables is not one of them.
Yeah, when you grow up studying art, like drawing and painting, you learn that sometimes it is worth the money to buy a better tool. I've been talking to people this week and last week about the fact that we live in San Jose, which is a town full of multi-millionaires and billionaires, but we don't have an art supply store anymore. You can go to Michael's and get some student level to mid-range paints and pencils and whatnot. But if you really want a choice in practical art supplies, you have to go over the hill to Santa Cruz or drive up to Redwood City or San Mateo or Berkeley or San Francisco to buy what some people would consider the good oil paints, the good watercolors, the good paper, etc. And as you do it long enough, you realize, hey, I really want to use these nice tools because sometimes they do contribute and they feel nice in the hand.
Yeah. I mean, so the audio analogy for me is microphones are super sexy. So all these new microphones come out every year and they look super sexy and they're just a sexy piece of gear.
Yeah.
And people spend forever trying to find the right microphone for what they're doing. And they're like, oh, if I had this microphone, I'd be capturing that magic. I'm like, if you can't blind pick that microphone out, if you can't like blind A/B that microphone, and you can't reliably tell the difference between your mic and this other mic, if you can't hear it, you shouldn't be using it, because what do you like? What is it adding if you can't perceive it? And I think a lot of these people, when they start out, it's probably true of art too. Like the difference between like a super high end, I don't know what the equivalent would be in the art world, but the difference between like a beginning student might not even perceive it. So I'm always kind of like, listen, when you can actually perceive the difference in these two pieces of gear and you like it, then go out and spend $2,000 on a microphone.
Yep.
I mean, I like a certain level of microphone, but it starts at like $300. Like I got, and I've auditioned some better ones. They sound different.
Well, you have to remember, with
different and better.
There's a lot of people who just sort of practice music for sort of fun or as a hobby or whatever. Lots of people do, and they, you're working away in some dreary job. You want to spend some money on your hobby. That's another factor. Okay, I've earned all this money doing something. Well, now I'm going to play a band at the weekend. Well, I'm going to get myself a really nice guitar. Just so that I can. Enjoy it. I can afford it, and I'm going to do it. So there's that, which is different from like, okay, now I'm trying to make a living as a musician. Well, I can't afford anything,
I mean, if you just want to spend your money, you will not have a problem doing that on audio gear. You can spend 10 grand on a guitar, easy.
Well, same on art supplies.
Yeah, just a Fender custom guitar starts at like five or 6 grand. Yeah, you oh man, you can spend $100,000 on a turntable. I had no idea that the turntable, the market for like home audiophiles. I was getting like a magazine. Actually, 100,000. I think that's an exaggeration. I think it was more like 30 grand for the turntable.
Well, it's another thing to make yourself look cool if you're a business executive. Like, I've got a 100 grand turntable over here. Suddenly people don't think you're boring because you're selling like industrial hygiene products. They think you're a cool guy who's got an expensive turntable.
Sounds right. I think you should lend your shit. Like if you're that type, you should like lend your shit out to real like artists on the weekend or something. Like when you're not using it during the weekday, just lend it out to them.
Yeah, you can start your own band and you hold them hostage because you own all the equipment, so they have to do what you tell them.
I've actually been in that situation where there's like one guy that just has like a lot of money, and it's like they pay for the practice space, they bought the PA, they buy everybody else is broke.
Yeah. Well, that's good. What else can we talk about? I watched Stranger Things, a bit of it, not all of it. I watched the first 2 episodes. Did anyone else look at that?
Of the first season?
No, the new one.
Oh, yeah, Naomi and Cheryl are doing that right now.
Yeah.
No. Go on. Sorry.
Well, like to me, really kind of the first season was this happens a lot of times. I feel like maybe they get something that's really popular and then they just kind of like, I don't know, can't develop it in an interesting way. So they make the monsters bigger, the death count higher, the drama more, and it doesn't necessarily make the show better. To me, that first season was by far the best.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I quite like it. I don't know. It seems right. I like that it's got lots of Dungeons and Dragons in it, and they seem to be sort of right. I don't know. They're a bit twee about it all, but whatever. They're sort of making fun right now of that old Tom Hanks, when the Satanic Panic was going on. So they're making a lot of fun about the Satanic Panic in D&D.
What?
That's good. Tina's not liking it much. She's not liking
Satanic Panic.
Anymore.
Yeah.
There was a phase where she seemed to be liking some of these shows. But
I think it was the 80s. Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, God, I can't remember the name of the middle school. Not middle school, the daycare, where the people running the daycare were accused of being Satanists and eating children. You see that even today. There's people will be accused of being cannibal Satanists. I think there's.
Don't forget the pedophiles. Let's be inclusive here.
That's just part of it as well.
Yeah.
The QAnon. I don't want to go down that path, but that's part of QAnon as well. Satanism.
I don't know what to. Yeah. Is QAnon still a thing?
Oh, it's a serious thing. Yeah.
Did it reach its peak, and is it coming back? Is it like descending now? I just remember it was like really hot.
It's still part of the culture.
So, is there any QAnon supporters or anybody who believes in all this right-wing bullshit? Please come on the show. And find out what the hell is going on in your tiny little brain.
My friend Cloud said something to me about QAnon.
What?
And I looked it up. So I opened like the wiki page on it because I was like, I've seen it and I've heard, a little bit of talk about it. And I was like, well, what is this thing? And when I looked it up, it just seemed like all these unsubstantiated fears. And it also seemed very. What's that?
It's just a lot of fear. Yeah, here's a lot of.
Yeah, it seemed like all this unsubstantiated fear.
Afraid of everything.
I mean, I just didn't think that there was any, and it seemed to be very kind of like dispersed, like not focused, like connecting dots that don't have connections.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
It's like
is there a wiki page
all the pieces came from different boxes. It's like somebody they mixed all the jigsaw puzzle pieces up and said, "Ooh, here's a really difficult puzzle. Let's try and solve it." When you complete it, I promise you, the picture's going to be of Hillary Clinton fucking children, and people are like, "How do I do this?"
So, I mean,
14 times the magazine has written it up. It's one could argue that it's
okay. Wait, I'm gonna sorry. I have to. Can you tell me about this? I have to. We got to keep the topic. I'm trying to do children's book and illustration. I mean, I don't know if I'm doing children's book these days, but I have to.
Yeah, I think we've gone off topic.
These topics. Tina's told me about this. I apologize to all my viewers. I'm trying to do it nice. I'm learning how to do this.
Okay.
We need some sort of code.
I have not watched
Behaving like bonobos. Let's say that. Yes.
To get back to Stranger Things, I'm not subscribing to Netflix. We're actually subscribing to Disney Plus right now because I'm totally geeking out on the old Disney live action movies. Movies like The Adventures of Bullwhip Griffin with Roddy McDowall, or anything with Suzanne Plachette, or Herbie the Love Bug. I'm totally digging on those movies.
Ooh, Herbie the Love Bug, that would be a good one. Yeah.
I remember that. I remember those movies.
And there's some cool stuff on. There's some little documentaries on animation and how they made some of the old movies. So I'm enjoying Disney Plus. I'm totally ignoring all the superhero stuff. I'm interested in the old cartoons.
Okay, well that's good. I might have a look for some of that because whenever I turn it on, it's just all Star Wars or whatever. So I'm like,
I'm so down on Disney.
I watched
but we have it.
Oh, sorry. I watched the first episode of Obi-Wan. I wasn't going to do it. My dad wanted to see it, and it was okay. It's just amazing how seamless the special effects are compared to like the Star Wars Christmas special.
The Star Wars Christmas special?
You've never seen
What
that?
are they doing that?
Oh my!
No,
joking, right?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people.
I don't know if
Star Wars and nerdy people. We all know about it, but regular people don't really know about it.
Really?
Like I'm like a regular person.
Well,
okay.
No, I mean I like Star Wars probably.
No, yeah. Like Star Wars
I got an average like for Star Wars. and I always have, even when I was a kid. It just didn't. You know, what did it for me was Indiana Jones, but
Oh yeah, I love
Star Wars Christmas special. Go on.
Okay, this is, you have to remember that back in '77, Star Wars was unique, and I don't think they had yet planned sequels for it. They weren't ready to merchandise it. Like for Christmas, I think it was like in '78, they didn't even have the toys ready. You would go into a department store and they would show you prototypes of the toys, and you had to buy gift certificates to give to your kids that, like, in a year or 6 months or whatnot, you'd be able to redeem them for the toys.
Man,
so
messed that one up.
And Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, they would be on Saturday Night Live, and they decided to create a Star Wars Christmas special, and you can find it on the internet. George Lucas has completely disowned it and says it's not canon. It's an embarrassment. Find it on YouTube and watch it. It's about Chewbacca going to his family to celebrate Wookiee Life Day. It has.
He gets there. The family is not at all well done. Like, no matter how well done, like, Chewbacca is, the family is sort of very badly.
Yeah, it's just bad '70s TV, but it's a classic.
There's a great bit where B. Arthur is like working in a cantina and like serving drinks, and she's singing a song, serving drinks to all the people.
B. Arthur from the Golden Girls.
I didn't realize Chewbacca was an absentee father.
He's a deadbeat dad, basically.
His son Lumpy.
I can't remember who the musical act was, but there was like a band. I mean, it's just like a bad Saturday Night Live episode.
Oh my God!
You have to find it and watch it. It's wonderful.
I'm on the wiki page right now, and it just sounds hilarious.
Yeah. I don't think you can buy a copy anywhere. You have to find a bootleg.
I'm just looking at who did the music here.
Yeah, is it
Jefferson Starship? It looks like.
Starship. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Which is presented as a 3D music video. Huh. Watched by one of the Imperial Guards. Interesting. It sounds kind of funny.
And they had
I just think of real early MTV.
They had a commercial in it, which was done by a Canadian animation company for a character that was going to be in the movie sequels. It was Boba Fett. So all these kids who watch this special are like, who's Boba Fett? What's Boba Fett? I'm obsessed with Boba Fett. And then we have the next movie, which was Empire Strikes Back, and you see Boba Fett for like 2 minutes, and kids are like, you've told us nothing about Boba Fett. You built him up for like 2 years, and there's no payoff, and everyone's expecting.
But now you've got a whole show about Boba Fett, and they're all complaining that it's crap. They said, you told us too much about Boba Fett. We don't want to know.
And then in the third movie, everyone's waiting for Boba Fett, and Boba Fett dies in the beginning of the movie.
Ah, what a ripoff, man.
Oh, yeah. The Star
That'd be
Wars,
like...
The Star Wars toys were, they were everywhere, but fortunately I was too old for them. But there's an interesting history about them. Before the Star Wars toys, the action figures, like the Star Trek action figures, the Space 99 action figures, the Planet of the Apes action figures, G.I. Joe, Steve Austin, were all these tall action figures. But the Star Wars...
like G.I. Joe, yeah.
The Star Wars action figures were these tiny little things like toy soldiers.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this until a couple of years ago. The reason they were designed so small was due to the oil shortage.
The gas. That was exactly. I remember that. I remember being on a holiday in France, reading like a Star Wars comic, and this was right in the early days of Star Wars. And then I also had like a word search book, and it was like the word search theme was like this gas crisis or something, which I didn't really understand. I learned about the shortage of oil through this word search puzzle. But okay, sorry, that's just a weird memory. But okay.
But that changed action figure toys. Look at the size of the toys of Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe. All those figures shrank.
Yeah, Masters of the Universe were a couple times the size of Star Wars figures, the way I remember them. But you're saying before that they were like 18 inches tall or something, or a foot tall, or
they were like Barbie size.
They were like what?
Let's not forget that plastic is probably the most valuable substance in the universe, as far as we know. Because as far as we know, right, I've talked about this before, I think, but there's planets that are made of diamonds, planets that are made of gold. There are vast, bubbles of ocean out there, water many times the size of this planet. Vast seas of water out there. So but as far as we know, we haven't found life anywhere. And what is oil other than life? Plants that have grown on this planet for millions of years and condensed down into taking the energy of the sun, condensed down into oil, which we turn into plastic. As far as we know, that doesn't exist anywhere else in the universe. It's only here. So it's quite probably the most valuable substance in the universe. And we're using it to make plastic toys, and we burn it up to drive cars around.
Yeah.
What about people? They don't exist anywhere else in the universe.
Well, people are the same. We're organic material. Yeah, we don't exist anywhere else. Yeah, but we don't put people. We're not running cars off people right now.
Not yet. Not that we know of.
That's Soylent Green. When are they going to remake Soylent Green?
Soylent Gas.
Soylent Green, where people
Soylent Go. It'd be called
Soylent
Go.
Soylent Green is a cliche. I mean, it wouldn't have the impact now. You can actually buy a food supplement called Soylent, and they have a green version of it. And they just
or you could just collect people's dead skin, and people could eat that. There's all sorts of ways to eat people without having to kill them.
Would it be like pork rinds?
Apparently, 90% of household dust is human skin, so you could just start eating that.
Yeah, but what about all those like dust mites? They're going to be unhappy about that.
Start eating dust mites. Insects are the food of the future.
Yeah.
Joe, we're supposed to be talking, or Joe. I mean, Chuck.
Every once in a while, you see a special about somebody. In terms of protein, insects are supposedly better for the environment if we start eating them. In other cultures, like there's, I think in Mexico, spiced crickets are a bar food. You eat them with beer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tina went to to like fancy restaurant in Denmark called like Boba or something like fancy, and they have insects on the menu now. Like high class. So then it'll filter down. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a food for the people, but at first it's going to be a food for the rich.
There's like a cricket chip.
Yeah.
There's like a cricket chip around. I think you can buy here. It's like chips in a bag, made out of like cricket legs or something.
Yeah.
Cricket chips.
They should have it at cricket matches. You could have like crickets at cricket.
That'd be good.
Nice.
And
or at baseball, you could say we're having baseball, but we're serving cricket.
That's un-American.
That probably wouldn't work.
I have to report you to that committee.
Well, if it turns out we start raising insects for protein, they'll just do what they do with everything. They'll just grind them up and put them in hot dogs.
Yeah. You can make nice insect flour. That's like a product that's available.
It would be called like hot bug, hot flies, hot hoppers.
Well, we eat shrimp, we eat lobster, We eat crabs.
Lobster. They're the rat of the ocean. No.
Eventually, culturally, the hard part is the marketing to get people to try this stuff. I remember reading an article about vegetarianism and vegan diets, and in England, someone noted if you have vegetarian sausage and you put on the box that it's vegetarian, people won't buy it. But if you put down, you describe it as savory and not necessarily list that it's vegetarian, people will buy it. The wording in the marketing for selling vegetarian products is very important because some people will see plant-based or vegetarian and just turn their nose up at it.
That's me. Well, that's not always me, but I just, years ago, I was talking to this guy who was a buyer for Whole Foods. And I expected him to be like all for vegan stuff and all for vegetarian stuff and all these meat substitutes. Like we're using all these novel protein substitutes these days. And also like protein substitutes, milk substitutes, cheese substitutes. And he made a really good point. And I didn't expect it from him. Substitutes. He said that, if you start off with something like a soybean, right, which we've all probably eaten in our life, and you make it into something that has a completely different texture, has a completely different flavor. He's like, the process of getting it from like transforming it into something completely different than the original form is suspect. And I agree with that. I think whatever you have to do to make, some of these things into something that's like completely opposite, the amount of processing needed to do that, not only, the waste in, I guess, like effort, but also what has to happen, the denaturing that has to happen for it to get from this place to that place, I am suspicious of.
Well, you could argue that with a lot of different things like bread. I mean, you grow the wheat, you mill the wheat, you bake it into something that's completely different than the wheat kernels. Corn is heavily processed.
What about corn? Do you get corn in this country?
Corn.
That was something they came up with at some point in England.
So is that fake corn?
Corn. Quorn.
What is corn?
I don't know. It's some product they came out with in England in the early 90s to replace
we have quarantine.
Made it corn.
Is that the beginning of quarantine, Chuck? I'm not sure. Where would you find this?
Look it up. Corn.
Where would you find this corn?
Corn. Yeah, corn.us. There is a corn.us. All right. Here it is. Corn.
What do they make out of it?
Learn more about corn with my protein. At Corn, we're on a mission to provide healthy food for people and the planet. A mission to get more people
I don't trust them.
Mission to meat-free meals. Mission to produce protein sustainably, but together, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's something that's sort of kind of a meat substitute. It's probably soy or something.
Could be gluten.
Let me see what corn brings up on the old Wikipedia. Q-U what?
Quorn. I'm at corn.us. Oh, they've got Drew Barrymore's here telling me that she likes corn.
Well,
I'm looking at
checks out.
I'm looking at your cartoon, Chuck, and what you've just recently been drawing. Yes, and I can see references to The Fifth Element, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Saturday Night Live, and Mars Attacks.
Yeah, well, somewhat references, yes.
Influences.
As I've discussed previously on the show, there's nothing copyrightable about a costume.
No.
Or,
so check this out. It's derived. Do you guys want to hear more about corn?
Yes,
Not really.
Not really.
Oh,
It's a microfungus.
Oh, there we go.
And
That's
then they
better.
mix it with egg albumin.
Okay, because yes, you can't advertise a product and say this is a microfungus. You can say it's made from baby mushrooms, maybe, but even people don't like mushrooms.
A microfungus.
Baby fungalettes.
Says it has a high protein content. Whenever people say protein, I think the general public needs to realize that protein is such a generic word that it's kind of a misnomer. Protein is almost like saying it's a calorie source. Well, there's a million things that are calorie sources, and they can be super different. And there's protein in everything. There's protein in grass. You can't digest grass, but there's protein in it. It's such a generic term. It's not very useful. There's certain like amino acids you need and certain ones you can produce. But I just see a lot of stuff about protein. I'm like, yeah. Well, is it good protein?
Yeah. Good protein or bad protein?
It's almost like saying food. It contains food. It's high in food value. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it means you can eat it.
mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's good every once in a while for people to shake up their diet and look at what they're eating, because it's very easy to fall into eating habits. You decide that this is food and this isn't food, and you don't try things. And also the idea that you think you need to have certain things and you can't live without them. I think people fall into that trap.
Like
Yes.
what? Like juicy
Like
steak?
old episodes of Doctor Who.
Well, bread, for instance. Alcohol, for another.
I think you
Sugar,
die if you don't get enough of that.
sugar for another. Bacon
Marijuana.
for another.
Dale, you're naming all the things people are addicted to. They do need those things.
Sugar, fat, and salt. We talked
Yeah,
about that.
I know the
Sugar, fat, and salts. The reason we crave sugar, fat, and salt.
But the thing is, you don't have to have them. But if you tell people, if somebody tells you that they're a vegetarian or a vegan, a lot of times people make a joke about it, or they think that you're weird, or some people, it could be just down to a cuisine. I like Ethiopian food, and someone will go, "Oh, how can you eat that?" Or I like sushi. "Oh, you're gross. You're eating raw fish."
I mean, I feel like the sushi thing was only weird in like maybe the 80s. So many people are into sushi in San Francisco. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like sushi is like the San Francisco fast food almost, except for the fast
like
part and the cheap
in
part.
San Francisco. The kids
What's
will
that?
eat it here.
I like injera. I even made it myself. I went out and I bought some teft and I made injera for a couple weeks. It was not that easy. It's not that easy, but I thought it was worth trying, I got about 1 out of 10 of those things turned out right. I don't know how they do it in Ethiopia.
No, I
like this.
I haven't been to an African restaurant most of my life. It was only just before the pandemic. A friend took me to an African restaurant. I only started eating Indian food in the last 5 years or so.
You gotta stay away from the bush meat. Stay away from the harvested monkey. You shouldn't be eating that.
Yeah. Monkeypox is real, everybody.
I lived, Dale, before I moved here, I lived in Tucson, and the way I describe Tucson cuisine, there's two things there. You can eat white food or Mexican food.
Yeah.
And if you search real hard, you can maybe find a lonely Thai restaurant somewhere. But it really is just two cultures there. And then when I moved out here, I had never really eaten much Thai food. I'd had it a couple times, and the Bay Area is just like a very foodie culture.
Yeah.
People get together and they just talk about the restaurants they've gone to, and it's a little bit too much for me, but.
Or Check Please Bay Area. I don't know. A friend of mine was on Check Please Bay Area.
I think Los Angeles is better for foodies. But yeah, San Francisco, the Bay Area. I remember visiting my niece in a college town in New York, and they had an Asian restaurant. So it was one building, and it was kind of decorated Chinese, Japanese, and their menu was just a hodgepodge of all these different Asian cultures. There was sushi, there was Korean, there was Chinese, there was Thai, because they didn't have enough of an educated customer base that could support just one cuisine. So they tried everything. It was a good place, though.
It really was an Asian restaurant.
Yeah.
It's like Taste of Asia. But yeah, I went to one of those places in Maine where my in-laws are in this little town in southern coastal Maine, and we went to this place. It was a Chinese restaurant, and it was like they were like so crazily diversified. I mean, there was like you say, it was like Japanese, Thai, Chinese, hot dogs, hamburgers.
Yep.
I was like, what doesn't this restaurant do? It's like a mall.
There was a great sushi place a friend of mine turned me on to, but he was telling me how great it was, and then he like leaned in and whispered to me, but I got to tell you, it's run by Koreans. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
But I guess, it was like a secret they didn't want to have get out, because they didn't want people to get upset.
I mean, I think sushi restaurants.
Americans.
I think sushi restaurants are supposed to be run by Japanese, right? Japanese people are supposed to run them.
I don't know. But I think when you visit parts of the United States, you should look for different restaurants to see how diversified an area is. When I go to,
oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
When I go to different towns in the United States, the first thing I want to do is look to see if they have a comic book store. Because if there's a comic book store, I can go somewhere and I can talk to the nerds and find out, what are the rents like? What's the diversity like? What are the people like? Because they're talking to a fellow comic book nerd.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's a comic book store that's been open for a while.
Yeah. And then you look for the restaurants. Like if you're in a town in the South, look for a Chinese restaurant and see who's working there, and try the basics, and find out what they think is good Chinese food. What worries me is if I go into a town, there will be some stores that are almost always there, and I'm not going to name them because this is a kid's show. But if I see those stores,
now you got me thinking.
And I'm worried.
It's a general audience show.
Are you talking about Hooters?
Well, but I always look for the bookstores. I look for the record stores. I look for the comic book stores. I look for the food restaurants. And then you always tour the grocery stores, because when you go to a grocery store in another state, you see what people specialize in. Like you go to the meat counter. Is there more beef than pork? Is there more pork than beef? You go to the bakery and you see, what are they selling in the bakery? And that will tell you a lot about the town that you're in.
Do they have churros, for example? No churros in the bakery? Forget this place.
I was in South Carolina, and the bakeries all had coconut cakes because that's a tradition. And
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Pecan pies, probably.
I went to the baking aisle, and they had more boxed cake mix in flavors I had never seen. I also went to where they have the stuff for frying fish, and they had all these boxes of different fish batter that I had never seen. I went to the liquor section, and they had flavored beers, like lime flavored, lemon flavored, all these weird beers that you would never see in California.
Mm.
And
what was the name of the store? Do you remember the name of the store?
I think it was a King's or something. It was a name I'd never heard of, but it was a chain in the South.
There's a Piggly Wiggly down in the South that I love the name of. When we were down there, we'd go to the Piggly Wiggly, and the Piggly Wiggly was just like the, whatever we'd say, like, I'm going to the Safeway or whatever you'd say in California.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm going to the Whole Foods. They'd be like,
I
I'm
have
going to the Piggly Wiggly.
I have a tie-dye Piggly Wiggly t-shirt.
I love that name. Piggly
awesome.
Wiggly. Only in the South.
But when I went to a Piggly Wiggly, I noticed that the produce wasn't as the produce section wasn't as large as one I would see in California.
Shocking.
The weirdest one I was in was a grocery store in Pennsylvania, and I think it was a unique one to itself. And I can't tell if it was run by Mennonites, but the people at the registers were all in the same costume. And the bakery section, like you go to Safeway here in California, they have a small bakery, but the bakery section in this Pennsylvania grocery store was enormous. It was bigger than like 2 7-Elevens. And it was donuts and Long Johns and just huge amounts of baked goods and pies. And you just don't see that here in California.
Yeah, it's a foodie culture, but it's like a super health culture. Yeah, it's weird. You live in San Francisco, and it's such a thin city. You get kind of out of touch. I went to Phoenix, I don't know, it's probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I was at this kids park, and I was like, oh man, all this, like half of these kids, not half, probably about a third of them, ranging for anywhere from like 2 years old to probably like 15 years old. And like a third of these kids are already overweight. I'm like, this is the rest of the country. This is what it's like everywhere, except for where I am in the Bay Area, where everyone's super foodies and health conscious, and kind of like health food conscious. It's a bubble.
Well, what do you think brings people to the Bay Area?
Money.
Parking.
That's not what I came here for.
Well,
I came here for
music.
music.
That was silly, though. I didn't realize I was like one of the few people that was still coming to San Francisco because I thought it was going to offer me a cool alternative lifestyle. I kind of arrived.
I came here for the music.
People, though.
But I think we both made a mistake, Chuck.
Yeah.
Well, in the 60s and 70s, at least in the South Bay, a lot of people came to work in the defense industry because the joke was if you grew up in San Jose in the 70s, your dad worked for Lockheed or he worked for FMC. And
right.
That's before Silicon Valley. And
there was NASA here too, wasn't there?
Yeah, NASA. Silicon Valley was, Apple, video games, Atari. But
it grew because that tech base was here already.
And, I know what people are paying for rents around here. And I listen to people who are angry about living in the Bay Area. I've got pals who ran away from the Bay Area to find cheaper places to live.
where they discovered they were aliens.
Oh yeah, they're Martians.
Yes.
They discovered that there's Martians in the Bay Area.
No, it's just I had friends who moved to other states, and they discovered that growing up in the Bay Area, when you move somewhere else, you don't necessarily make new friends there, or you don't gel there. You become an alien either due to your beliefs or politics or habits. You're not
Yeah.
part of that tribe.
I wish there was more awareness around the bubble element. I think it's dangerous when you live in a bubble and you don't recognize the extent to which you're in a bubble. Like, you know, if you just go and hang around with all your San Francisco friends and you talk about all the San Francisco stuff and do the San Francisco cultural things, you kind of lose perspective that you are in this culture that is not representative of the country.
Yep.
You know?
No, we're ahead.
If you're not aware of that,
here, it's because we're in the future. Everybody else is in the past.
Well,
bye.
There's all kinds of different bubbles. There's a cultural bubble. You know, people who are from the same country will sometimes congregate together because they're comfortable with people who have the same background from that previous country. There's religious bubbles. There's socioeconomic bubbles. There's bubbles regarding health. You know, if you share a common illness. There's industry bubbles. You know, oh, I work in this profession. You need to mix and meet these people, but sometimes you realize the tribalism is so strong that they won't let you in.
There's also I also have a theory that there's reality bubbles, that we live in our own little realities that's sort of going along, and then when you meet somebody else whose reality is sort of different from yours, like say they saw somebody wearing a red dress, you saw a blue dress, you know, then your reality bubbles intersect. That's why sometimes we're like, I'm sure that's not how it happened, but their reality is stronger than yours. Maybe they have a photograph to prove their reality. So our reality forced to merge, our bubbles merge. You know, we live in a total reality, and we're generating that reality around us. You know, we generate our own reality. I mean, you know, we're affected by the reality of others that they project on us, but we also have our own ability to project our own reality.
Yeah.
I just, I guess I'm thinking about like the dangers of, you know, I mean, that's kind of the extreme version of this is kind of like cults, where everybody in the cult reinforces their wrong ideas when cults go bad. Because I'm not like against cults in like, you know, all of them, but when cults go bad, I think it's kind of they reinforce all their wrong ideas, and it's like an echo chamber.
Yeah, you've refused to let your bubble burst.
Unhealthy.
You know, you hold on. You get other people around you to reinforce your bubble, like they're projecting that reality, and it creates this sort of nice sort of wall of bubbleness. And then at some point, like two big hard bubbles come together, and they're not going to merge without bloodshed.
Well, the thing to remember is we're all
doing a kids show.
That's how war starts. You've got two large groups that have enforced like reality bubbles that are incompatible, and then now those bubbles have to merge. And the only way they can merge is by killing some of the people that are projecting the reality that goes against the reality you want to project.
Well,
hey kids, I just want to tell you kids that you're safe. What Chuck's saying is all made up.
What I'm saying is that everything's all made up. So kids, what I'm saying is, you know, keep believing in the world that you want and work to make that happen.
Well,
yeah.
You have to remember that we all belong to cults. Cult is just a word that we apply to a belief system. Like I sold Apple computers. I was part of the cult of Mac. And you can get along with people who have differences which are based on fantasy. And I'm saying this to tweak Chuck's nose because I know he's working on his Mac Pro right now. and I'm here on a Samsung.
But
it makes you a pro if you work on
God.
that.
What? And you worked at ComputerWare.
Yeah.
That's like one of the Beatles saying, "Well, I'm all into the Rolling Stones right now."
Yeah. Well, it's you see, if you are in the leadership of a cult, or you're part of someone who maintains the cult, you see a little bit of the reality of it.
Yes. You see behind the curtain.
Yeah. I saw behind the curtain. And you have to remember that the concept of a cult is that's actually a marketing thing now. They wanted the cult of Mac because it provides loyal customers. And so we're cults about a lot of different things. You could argue that people are part of the cult of McDonald's because they like McDonald's hamburgers. I'm part of the cult of Levi's jeans because that's the only jeans that I will buy. Um, you identify with something and it becomes part of your persona and your identity, and you find like-minded people. I was part of the cult of craft beer, and when I gave up drinking alcohol, I was a sinner. I was no longer welcome in that cult.
How do you figure out if you're in a cult? Like, if you're like,
breathing.
hey, am I in a cult? Like, how do you figure that out?
You're breathing. Are you breathing? You're in a
You're
cult.
breathing? No.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's like if you're
Yeah,
not being hypnotized yourself, if you're not hypnotizing yourself, someone else is hypnotizing you.
Well,
Perspective.
like to various degrees, right?
You ask
Like,
the
to
question.
various
If people
degrees,
are trying
like
to stop you seeing what's really going on, then you're in a cult.
If
like
someone,
I always think
go on.
I always think it's a good litmus test if you start asking questions.
Yes.
And people respond by like trying to shut you down. That's
Yes.
a bad sign.
Here's
Like
a
if
good
you're
one.
like,
Do
hey,
they
Mr.
let you read a
Jones,
book?
why are we going to this island?
Yeah.
And he's
Do
like,
they let you read a book? Are there free choice of books to read where you can read any
Yeah.
book you choose, including like an Alan Moore graphic novel? Are you allowed to read Alan Moore graphic novels in this cult or in this group? Or are they telling you you can't because they're subversive? In that case, you may be in a cult.
Yeah. Yeah. Start asking questions about the cult and see how your friends respond. That's it.
Are you
they
allowed
try to
friends that
lock you
aren't in the
up?
cult? Can you have a friend who's like has beliefs that are opposed
Yes.
to you?
Yeah. That's a Scientology thing. You can't have friends outside Scientology.
Oh, absolutely not, because they'll say, well, Scientology is bullshit.
Well,
what are those called?
What, friends outside of Scientology?
Yeah, there's a word that they have for those people that ask questions about Scientology. It's called like disempowerers or something. Scientology has a word for it.
Yeah, I don't
like
know.
Underminers
or.
Or
Ooh, do they have buzzwords? That's a good thing in a cult.
There's similar terms to that in multi-level marketing. That's one of the things that you have to watch for is if someone tries to talk you out of a belief system or a business plan, and the other people who are part of it say, oh no, they just don't want you to succeed, or they're evil, or they don't know what you're talking about. That's when you start researching, hey, am I being scammed?
Yeah. If everyone who asks questions is a hater, those haters, they're just jealous.
Yeah.
Just jealous of all the money you're going to lose. I mean, gain by this opportunity.
Yeah. Right. How much money are you paying?
That's we're talking about Scientology. We're talking about things that people say are obviously cults, but cults are everywhere. They're creating a cult.
Degrees of cults. Well, I mean, most people, like, I believe in a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to drink poison Kool-Aid for most of it.
Well, yeah, remember when we had
My
Justin
dedication.
on, my Jeff Cutter friend, and he talks
I
about how
belong
he
to a lot of.
lived on this sort of retreat up in Northern California. That sounded like a good cult. He joined a good cult for a little while.
Yeah, good cult.
Yeah, there are good cults. You know, you could argue that the cult of Mac is a good cult.
In comparison to the Jim Jones cults of the world and the Hail Bop and what were those guys called? The Hail Bop people?
What were they called?
The Heaven's
Gate
cult.
Heaven's Gate, wasn't it? Or Heaven's something like that.
Apple's way better than that.
Well, the thing is,
sign me up to Apple.
Yeah.
The thing is, that was actually a joke that I heard every day. Was they would joke, "Have you drank the Kool-Aid?"
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the, that's kind of the joke since, the Jim Jones thing, right?
But you're supposed to drink the Kool-Aid, and if you didn't drink the Kool-Aid, you're out. And you don't, that's the thing, because your friends are all in the cult. Your friends are quite nice people.
Yeah.
And you like your friends, and
I knew people.
If you don't drink the Kool-Aid, they won't be your friends anymore. And what are you going to do? You're going to be a lonely person with no friends.
I knew people.
That's when you joined, because you were alone in the first place.
I knew people that had shrines to Steve Jobs in their home.
That's a little weird. Is that a joke?
Well, to them,
that a joke?
To them, it was, but the shrine was still there, and they had a reason for it. Their career was based on this. There's a difference between, being part of a cult where it's a joke versus being part of a cult where it's causing you financial and mental harm. And some people, like Chuck said, will become part of an organization because they're lonely. They want to interact with people.
Yeah.
Oh, community. That desire for community is really strong. Yeah. I mean, that's a really strong drive for most people. Membership, community. I mean, because we're like social animals. We're like sheep or cows or crows or something. I feel like artists are a little less prone to that.
We are. I mean, some people choose not to be, but they've got different problems.
What's that Groucho Marx quote? I think it's Groucho Marx is like, I would never belong to a club that would have me as a member.
Yes.
I kind of feel like
that's my motto. Yeah.
I kind of feel like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's definitely my feeling. Yeah,
well,
any club that would have me as a member, it's probably not worth joining.
I'd be a terrible cult member, I think. I'd be like a cult member until I started asking questions, and they'd be like, "Hey, we got to shut this Chris guy up. We got to put him in the hole for a while." It'd be like a combination between Cool Hand Luke and and I don't know what. I'm just a bad. I'm not the type of person you want in your cult, probably. Bad cult member.
No, you're one kind of guy to start a cult, I think.
The ideal
is start a cult.
The ideal is, if you're lucky, the cult that you belong to is your family, and you then will sometimes add people to your extended family, your friends. But sometimes, if you don't have that, you go out looking for companionship. You end up involved with people who are going to use you emotionally or financially.
You're vulnerable. You're lost and you're vulnerable, and that's when they find you and prey on you.
Yeah. But I've touched on cults. I've been approached by them. Used to go down. People will talk to you about multi-level marketing, or they'll want you to join this fraternity, or they'll want you to come to this church. You grow up, you encounter that in the Bay Area.
Okay, now you're talking about like the breakdown of social trust. They were pinning this the other day on the fact that we don't have any of these sort of organizations, like the Round Table and all this. It used to be there was very high participation. you drive into a town, you see all the little sort of shields up coming into town,
Yep.
showing all these sort of community organizations that exist. Those things, like membership in those things, has just dropped off dramatically, and so we
Round
don't
table.
have the community involvement that we used to have. And that
I think
it's moved on. It's moved online. I mean, that's where it is now. But
I think Chuck's talking about like the Masons or
like the Masons,
or
yes. Or if you drive into like a town in this country, this doesn't happen in England, but here, if you drive into a town, a little town, they'll have like a sort of sign up coming in that shows all the sort of organizations that exist in that town.
the Shriners,
like the lodges.
Yes, like the
lodges and stuff.
Like all these sort of things, like this sort of sign that you go into town. It says,
I don't understand what those things are about. Can anybody join those?
Well,
they're community organizations. Yes, you can join them. Like here, there's like the Lions is something that's sort of kind of a bit more active.
I can be like a Freemason if I want to be. I thought that I had to be like special.
No, those are community, or no, you don't have to be special. You just say I want to help, and they need volunteer raising money for causes.
I had a grandfather who was a Mason. I was in a fraternity in college. There are clubs, and sometimes these clubs are church related. Sometimes they have their own values. Sometimes they're profession related. For example, in San Jose is the world headquarters for the Rosicrucians. I think in Los Gatos, I think there was either an Elks or a Moose Lodge. There's, I think, a group called the American Legion.
Oh, I've heard of those. I've heard of the American Legion before. I've heard of all this stuff before. I just thought that they were more kind of semi-secretive societies that weren't necessarily open to everyone. Like you had to be white and Protestant, or had to have the right parents, or some shit like that.
Well, I think there's certain amounts of that involved in it, So it's like sort of good to be bad, and younger people are not being drawn into these organizations anywhere near the rate they used to be, because they're finding community online now. We've sort of entered this different phase of global community.
They've got meta.
But, it means that we're not really looking after our own backyards. Maybe, I don't know. Hard to know. You've got to look after your own backyard.
They can go into the meta on the Facebook and then be like hypnotized into like obedient whatevers. Did we ever talk?
Oh, go on.
Well, have you guys seen the ad for Meta, where the kids are in the museum looking at art?
Oh no,
that's a creep. I don't know how you guys perceive that, but like to me that was creepy. Like I was not digging on that.
What were they doing? I didn't see it.
Well, it's like these kids that are probably like, I don't know, maybe 20, and they're in this art museum and they're looking at the art on the wall, and suddenly they kind of get like hypnotized and the art kind of comes to life. And it's like a lion and like a prey species. And instead of the lion tearing the prey species apart, the lion and the prey species are just getting along really peacefully. And then there's music and the kids are just nodding their head like they're,
The Peaceable Kingdom.
Yeah, and then the kids are just looking like they're getting hypnotized by the animation and the music, and they're just nodding their head kind of like zombies. And I'm like, I don't like this ad.
I read a lot of articles about Meta. You guys all know that Facebook bought Oculus Rift for that technology, right? Okay.
Is that virtual reality?
Yeah, well, virtual reality, and then I used to go to all the Mac Worlds and trade shows for years growing up, and they've been playing with 3D and virtual reality and augmented reality for a very long time. And the problem is one of many problems is getting high enough LCD density to be wearable, so you would have high resolution in these goggles or glasses. But this idea of meta, where you're in this virtual reality and you're wearing these goggles that give you a 3D look, all that's doing is combining two things that failed as a business, which is 3D movies and a virtual reality called Second Life. And I've worn those goggles at trade shows, and I get motion sickness from it. And back in the day when people were talking about why aren't 3D movies taking off, there are things about how we see, how our eyes move, and how we react as predators, because we are predators. Our eyes are in the front of our head. I don't think Meta's going to work as a business, and I'm concerned about Apple's AR, VR tool that's coming out. I think they're not going to be big hits.
So you don't think Apple's tool or Facebook's virtual realities are going to be big hits?
No, I think for business applications, like if you're a mechanic or a doctor and you can call up information on those glasses while you're working on something, like a heads-up display, like a fighter pilot would have, I think that
like the overlay,
the
overlay stuff.
Yeah. I think there's a niche there, but I don't think as a toy or as entertainment, it's going to take off.
Yeah, my son and his friends were quite into it for a little bit, and they were like doing.
They threw up.
I mean, this was more, I guess, probably during the pandemic or earlier on in the pandemic. They were doing sort of virtual games where they were practicing like as a team to do a sort of sounded like the game in Ender's Game, where they're practicing throwing the ball around or whatever, like in an arena. So they practicing. He was getting quite sweaty at doing this, but it didn't sort of last very long, and now I don't think they're really doing it. So it was like a sort of brief phase, and then so it's not really. I don't know. I think it's like hard for people to be that with that helmet on for that long.
Did they tell you why? Like it wore off? Like why they didn't keep doing it?
I'd have to ask him. I don't really know. I just think they sort of moved on to doing other things. Really.
See, the thing that creeped me out about it is the animation and the music was very kind of, it had a very kind of hypnotic feel to me, and I thought to myself, I already hate it when young kids get advertised to. That's one of my problems with Disney, because my daughters watch a lot of Disney and they're just relentless with their advertising, and I'm looking at this ad and I'm thinking, so this is like even more hypnotic. Like you want people to be in this kind of thoughtless hypnotic state when you hit them up with suggestions, and that's what made me uncomfortable about that ad. So I hope that's not where it goes. There's this guy named Uri
Uri Geller.
He's a world
Uri Geller.
Is he the guy that talks about hackable humans? And he's a historian.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
No, we're talking about the Spoonbender.
He's been back lately. He's been doing some stuff lately.
This guy.
Big spoons.
This guy is a World Economic Forum advisor, and he's a Israeli historian. But he talks about humans are hackable, and how the idea of free will is going to go away, that we're living in this place now where machines will be able to predict and know us better than we know ourselves. And we have to watch out and I'm like, well, dude, I got to disagree with you there. I'm not saying we might not get there, but right now, the best way to manipulate a human is with another human. And even that is super spotty. Like even the best con artists in the world can't get everybody all the time. and the computers don't have generalized intelligence yet. So maybe you're talking about something that's going to happen in 20 years, but his whole line of thinking is kind of scary. This idea that there's so much data collected, and he talks about surveillance inside the skin, inside the body. So not just watching us from the outside, but like looking at what our heart rate is doing, our blood pressure, chemicals in our blood, and how the computer will understand what our emotional response is before we even recognize it. I wish I could pronounce his last name, but I was like, this is scary. I don't like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, are we going to end up living our lives in hermetically sealed bubbles, or are we going to realize, well, life's a lot more fun if you don't worry about it so much? I don't know. You know what? You want to live forever?
Yes.
I mean, not like this, but if I feel great all the time, then yes.
Yeah.
I think the people that want to live forever are probably rocking it day by day. They're like, hey, this is awesome. I'd take more these days. Other people are like, it was good while it lasted. That's kind of where I am.
But I keep my eye on the VR stuff, but I've lived through more than one attempt to make 3D movies and 3D television.
Oh,
And
I
it
didn't mind
always
the 3D
failed.
movies. I quite like them. I was sorry they went away. I was liking 3D movies. I always do. I like it. I'm one of the people that loves them. I love them. I don't care. It doesn't give me a headache. I enjoy the effect. I love it.
The interesting thing was they stopped shooting them with two cameras. They just would shoot with one camera, and then they would hire a company to go in to every frame and create that 3D effect. That technology that James Cameron created for Avatar just didn't catch on.
Right, but that other kind of 3D is not as good.
Yeah.
But Avatar is coming back, right? When are they going to be back? We're going to have 2 more Avatars, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to the theaters or how they've been shot. I'm really not that excited. I saw Avatar once, and I never felt a need to see it again.
Is James Cameron doing the second one?
No idea.
Oh, now Dale, I did like your post yesterday. Well, this is speaking directly to that about you were saying that in the old days, if you were a lover of sci-fi and fantasy, you had to go through like a real sort of rigmarole. You had to hunt around. You had to stand in line. You had to be patient, and finally you got it. And so your willing suspension of disbelief was a lot more. You'd tolerate greater sort of failures in special effects or crummier special effects, just because you were getting something. Now it's all handed to a sort of plate. It's all beautifully done. It's easily accessible. I just push a button and I can see the latest Star Wars movie on my own couch.
I believe that.
And what's the excitement of that? And I don't really, then it's too easy. I don't care about it anymore.
A friend of mine, the author, well, not a friend. I meet him once in a while. He's a very nice guy. He's offered me advice. He's an author named Stephen Barnes, and I recommend checking out his novels. He was asking the other day, should I binge the X-Files? Did you like the X-Files? He had never seen them. And I told him that he couldn't watch the X-Files now, even though he could stream them, because it's a different experience binging shows without commercials than watching them and waiting for the next week and having to go through the commercials.
Yes.
The idea of us watching a movie at home on a big screen TV where we can pause it and go to the bathroom or go get whatever food we want out of the fridge, and not having to drive there, not having to stand in line, not being with people. You're not watching a movie. You're watching content. The ritual of seeing content is just as important as the decor and service of a restaurant.
Yeah. Right. That's a good point. Yes.
Well, if you have a week in between episodes, it gives you a lot of time to digest that episode. I mean, like when you study a subject, you'll study it, you'll let it sink in, and then you return to it a little bit later. You don't, like you wouldn't try to read like a whole physics book in like 4 days, even though you probably could. You wouldn't understand shit. It's probably not quite that bad, but
yeah.
you know
What
what I
I'm going to
mean? Like,
advise our listeners now is that you cut out all other media and you only listen to this show once a week, and you'll be amazed how much better it gets if that's the only media you're consuming.
Well, remember, a lot of TV shows who are designed to have commercials will build to a climax and a cliffhanger right before the commercial to get that customer, that viewer, to come back after the commercial. Dave Gerald wrote about that in his book when he wrote the episode Trouble for Tribbles for Star Trek as a college student.
One of the most famous episodes, even though it was kind of one of the more silly episodes, but it wasn't that silly. It was great, and introduced that character Harry Mudd. Didn't he appear in that episode?
No, Harry Mudd. It's Cyrano Jones, not Harry Mudd.
Oh, Cyrano Jones. Okay, yes, all right, yes. Sorry, Harry Mudd's a different one. Yes, all right, yes. So Cyrano Jones. Yes, okay.
But the ritual of consuming something is very important, and I think that with Amazon, you can buy just as good a toy on Amazon as you can in a toy store, but the whole experience of buying it is different, and I think that is very important for retail therapy.
Yes, you had to suffer the judgment of the store owner. Like, I mean, there's always an element, like, it's most extreme in, say, a young person trying to buy a condom. That's always sort of show, or condom. Sorry, condom. Say that.
Condom.
Condom. And they bought a condom in the store, and
that's like George Bush saying it.
That's the sort of ultimate embarrassment. But any product, that you buy in a store, you're having you're facing the judgment of the person that's sort of selling you the product in a way. Do you know what I mean? You have to have that. Like,
you can.
I want to buy something ridiculous. Amazon's not going to judge me for it. They're just going to send it to me. But you go in a store. I've got to go to somebody else in the world. I said, I like this product, and I'm going to take it home. And they've agreed with you. They're happy to sell it to you. But you stood in front of another human being, and you've expressed your desire for this thing, and you return home with it. So you faced the goddess. In the terms of the hero's journey, you went out, you faced the goddess. And she's given you the boot, and you've returned home. Amazon, not really. Goddess is sort of like permanently not looking. You just come and take it, and you're like, well, I can just take it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, retail is entertainment. When I worked at Computerware, people would save for months to buy a new computer system and all the peripherals. And they would come in to buy a laptop, and they'd be spending, this is back in the late 90s, a few $1,000s. So this was not a small purchase. It was a purchase under the level of a car. And, they wanted a memorable, positive experience. So we would walk them through the store, we would hold their hand figuratively, and we would walk through the stuff, and we would tell them, we want you to have a good experience when you get home, setting up everything, and we want you to be pleased with what you bought. And for big purchases, we would applaud the person at the end, and they would leave with huge smiles on their faces as we took the stuff out to their car. I'm sure that the stuff that we sold then is obsolete and has been thrown away. But the memory of that experience, I hope, stuck with them.
Yes.
Dale, do you? Oh, go ahead.
I remember more standing in line for movies sometimes than the actual movie itself. shopping is
Yeah, that's
shopping is entertainment. You know, I spent more time browsing for DVDs and VHS tapes than I ever did watching the ones that I rented.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I still do that anyway. I still spend more time choosing what movies I'm going to look at than actually looking at them.
I'm so surgical. Like, you know, when I was a kid and I was shopping at a store, I basically know exactly what I'm going for. Go in there, get it, and spend zero. I guess I'm just not a very like a natural like shopper. I basically want to spend as little time as possible in most stores. There's some cool stores, but a lot of them, like Guitar Center, I don't want to spend much time in there. But I guess if this, yeah, I mean, I don't know. For
Well,
me, like the idea of waiting in line, I don't think I've ever really waited in line that long for a restaurant, or like I never see films at their opening. I always see them like, you know, nowadays I always see them a couple years later. I don't like lines or people or
Yeah, no, me
like
either. You know, I
that's
don't
why
like crowds. I don't like going out. It's hard for me going shopping, going into town, walking around shopping. You know, yeah, it's different for me. You know, that was always sort of a more difficult thing for me to do. So I'm quite happy. I always like the idea of being able to do all my shopping on the computer or on the telephone.
I like to hold
I
things.
used
I
to
like
think it was
that
gonna
part of the store. Like I like to go in and like touch things because you get so much more information, and you can maybe talk to a clerk who doesn't really care what the store sells, so they'll tell you straight, unlike all the bullshit Amazon reviews. That's good because now the reviews are just so bad online. It's just like I almost don't look at them. So I like that part of it. But a lot of times the thing that kills retail for me is I guess the selection. And you know, I'm in San Francisco, but I still can't find local retailers for some of the stuff I want to buy.
yeah,
A lot of my audio gear I just can't buy locally, you
yeah.
know, which, you know, is kind of crazy because here I am in San Francisco. You would think, you know, there's probably better inventory in this area than 95% of the country, you know, unless you live in a big city.
Yeah, Los Angeles has art supplies that you couldn't get in the Bay Area anymore. Um, a good example of that, well, when I say Los Angeles, I mean SoCal. If you needed an airbrush, the only retail store that I would know of is Coast Airbrush down in Anaheim. Um, they used to sell them up here, but not to the same extent. The hobby shops are gone in the Bay Area. There's a few, but none of the old model hobby shop that would have everything from model trains to um, remote controlled airplanes to plastic model kits. Um, the
Oh
thing
yeah,
that the thing that
You,
oh, go on.
well, I was going to say that something I would like to see, and I'm surprised, and probably somebody is doing this, is just have a shop that supports online sale. Like, for example, I would go into this shop, I could put my hands on the gear or whatever it is, I could talk to people, and then I could just order it right there. Like so they wouldn't have to deal with constant inventory churn. They would have the stuff there and they would know about it, but they wouldn't have to deal with inventory coming in and going out and do we have too much of this or too little of that. And it'd be basically like just a showroom for the stuff, and then you'd order it online. Like, to me, that's a good marriage.
Okay, yeah.
That's
There used to be this store in England called Argos, which it may still be around. I don't know, but it was a big innovation in the 80s that they had exactly this. So they sent out a big fat catalogue, and you could go into their store, and the store was basically just an area with all the catalogues, you know, laminated catalogues. You could look in the catalogue, and you say, "This is what I want," and you write it on the card, and then then it comes out and they give it to you. Like, so they've got a warehouse in the back, but more it's a sort of catalog business, but in town you can go into the store and get it too, but they don't have all the things out in shelves. Everything's sort of in the back in the warehouse, and you just look at the picture and order it out of the catalog. And it was very, very successful in the 80s.
They had that in the United States. It was called service merchandise. And just recently, the CEO of Ford Motor Company has said that is what they want to do with dealerships. They want to eliminate on the lot inventory. The dealerships will be service centers, and they want customers. That's the eventual plan, is for customers to order these vehicles online. And it's an example of just-on-time inventory. You only buy stuff that you need.
Yeah, and there are all these car apps with buying stuff now. I mean, we were looking at some cars the other day, and yeah, I mean, I will probably use one of those apps to buy my next car.
The thing is, have you guys been to Universal Studios and to the Harry Potter experience? Okay.
No.
Before the pandemic, my girlfriend and I went to Universal Studios, and I wanted to go to the Harry Potter section, and of course we went. And it's not a ride; it's an experience. You stand in line, you go into a recreation of Ollivander's wand shop, and someone from the crowd gets picked, and an actor dressed in a Harry Potter costume goes through the experience of helping you choose a wand. And there's special effects in the shop, so the tourist is holding a wand and says some magic words, and then lights flash or things clang. It gives you the illusion that you're conducting magic.
Oh yeah, cool.
And then after that show, they take you into a store which is similar to Ollivander's, with thousands of wands in boxes. And you're encouraged to look through these wands, which are painted molded plastic, and choose a wand. And that shop is packed. And the wand packaging is these beautiful cardboard boxes and tissue paper. And when you buy it, you get a very nice bag to put your wand in. So, of course, we bought wands. But I'm also a fountain pen fan, and I go to fountain pen stores. And I went to a fountain pen store in Monrovia, which is outside of LA. And unfortunately, it's closed. But buying those wands is the exact same experience as buying a fountain pen. And that store in Monrovia had displays from fountain pen companies that were over 100 years old because it was a family business. So shopping, as we lose it in malls and downtowns, you'll see those experiences in amusement parks. You go into Universal Studios or Disney, you see shops with displays that are far more elaborate and far more involved than you'll ever see in a mall. It's
that while I was going through. I just wanted to
as we order stuff online and these stores die, we're going to be converting what was just normal retail into special event retail, like comic book conventions or Monsterpalooza or the San Jose Toy Fair or flea markets. People are still going to want that retail experience. And the only way that's going to be economically feasible is if these become special events, like a comic book convention that happens once a year or every 6 months. Sorry,
I just want to try stuff out because I feel like most of my online purchases involve a certain percentage of guess. And when the percentage gets too big, it takes a lot more time. I have a lot less confidence. You know, for a while I was taking Amazon for the recommendations, and I found out that's not a good idea. You know, I got like they're like recommended product, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll try this. I don't know when they rolled that out. They rolled that out maybe like 5 years ago when they started recommending products. And so I did it for a while, and I was like, this is a bunch of cheap crap. And now I never take the recommendations because I realize it's just this, and this was for tools. It's just, I could shop a lot faster, and people would get paid a lot faster. I could spend a lot less time doing it if I had more information. And that's what sucks up all the time. You know, it's no honest reviews, and you can't hold the thing in your hand. That kind of drives me nuts.
Yeah, but how much do you really learn about a product by just holding it in your hand? I mean, outside of clothing, or outside of something where you need to know what the ergonomics are. The story is that when companies built SLR cameras, they would sometimes make them heavier than they needed to be because they would feel good in the hand because they were heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so for the stuff that I buy, you learn so much by like playing a guitar, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much information conveyed by playing a guitar. But if it's not a guitar, if it's just like an interface or something like that, you can play with all the knobs, and just by touching them and tapping on them, you can see if this is like cheap plastic, you know,
Yeah.
or if this thing feels like it's solidly made, and you can plug stuff into it and see what the connections feel like. That's what I do anyway. So, I mean, I guess it depends on what it is. You know, if it's a computer, not a whole lot, probably. You can tell with a computer, I think what I get out of it is how loud is this thing? And maybe I can get a sense of build quality, but that's about it. And I guess if I brought a CD or something like that, or a thumb drive, I could run some stress tests on it. But yeah, I guess it depends on the thing. For guitars, it's just essential. There's really no way. Otherwise, you are buying blind. And a lot of people buy guitars online. But I just think that's a tricky thing to do. I've done it. And like art supplies, that whole thing of holding it in your hand, you know, or maybe seeing the actual color of the paint in person, or like that whole tactile thing, I think that could be useful. Although I never hear my daughter really talking about supplies much. I don't think she's that focused on it. Half of her artwork is digital anyway.
Yeah. With digital, everything you really need to know. Like I used to go down to the CTN Expo because Wacom would be there, and they would bring prototypes and products, and you could try them with your hands. But now I still want to hold the stuff, but you really can't try software. You just have to read the reviews and try a trial and then buy it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
All right, guys. Look, that's where I'm at on this one today. I don't know.
All right.
Great work.
Yeah, I was only going to go for an hour.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You got me 2 hours of good work out of me there. I did quite a lot. So that's all right.
I don't shut up. It's nice talking to you all again.
Yeah, you too, man. Seems
guys,
like you're feeling marginally better.
Join us. Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So
we're all working on it. I love that. I love having these calls. Thanks for tuning in. See some people have been watching us. That's great. I say hi. Hey, guys, if you're watching the show, you'd like to come on this show, you're welcome. We're open to guests. We're open to topics. I don't know what we're doing. We're just discussing the topics of the day. But yeah, I'm trying to draw. I'm gonna I'm going to try and do this every week and keep moving forward on this. I don't know, when it's just me and Chris, I feel a bit like we just sort of chat away. With Dale here, then I feel like Chris and Dale can chat, and I can focus on drawing, and just pop in when I've got something.
Chuck's trying to be productive or something.
I need to draw. I should draw today. Chuck,
yes,
Chuck makes me feel bad that I'm not drawing.
Well, I think I feel bad
for showing us up.
So that's why I draw so much. If as soon as I sort of sit around trying to have some fun, I'm like, oh, I really should be drawing. I know I've got some work to get on with at the moment. I'm doing some stuff for Goodman Games.
Well, all right. Should we call it?
Yeah, I think that we had a good session. We'll be back again next Wednesday at 9 a.m.
I'll try.
Yeah. Let me just say yes for now.
Oh, hang on,
because it'll probably be yes then too. So,
yeah. All
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.
Good shot.